Probably one of the most scariest things I ever did in my life was coming out to friends and family.
What makes a man or a woman? X and Y's for girls and guys. Some say birth, some say choice, but the truth is just who you are.
I knew a transgender I met at work, and I talked to her and told her, and she says I could have knocked her over with a feather. Then I told one friend, and it took a long time before I would come to group or see a therapist or anything. To put it bluntly, one of my friends who is a doctor here tried to get me to come for therapy for 7 years before I come. He says I was the most obstinate son of a bitch he ever knew. So that kind of describes my past, but this is who I am now, and I would have to say that I have never been happier in my life than I am right now, being who I have always wanted to be.
Well, actually, I pleaded with my mother when I was 4 years old. The only boy of two sisters, that I was supposed to be a girl. Please, let me be a girl. But that was unheard of. My father wanted a boy, so I had to remain a boy.
I've always known I was a male. When I was young, I couldn't understand people calling me a female. I never understood that. I never fit into the female mold. I date women, so I had to live a majority of my life as a lesbian, which that term never fit me. I always felt off.
I remembered the fear that I felt the first time that I actually went out in public dressed. And, you know, once I closed that door behind me, I knew I was all by myself. And yet, I did it because I was driven by this force that I knew was inside of me. I just came to the point where what I really wanted to do was to shock people. So this is when I started going out in public dressed with things like these and dresses like these. So,
on top of being transgender and pretty much known it all my life, you know, I also grew up really poor with a single mother, always traveling around every 6 months. But that gave me low self-esteem and depression and a lot of things on top of struggling with trying to figure out who I am.
As a veteran, especially, the VA healthcare system literally saved my life. It opened up so many doors for me.
There's a saying that the military will make a man out of you. The good old red, white, and blue.
I came from a military family with a very strong sense of serving my country. That was something that you were supposed to do, and I never ever wanted to be an embarrassment. So if that was something that my family thought I was going to, that a man should do, then that's what I'm going to do. And I did everything that I was supposed to just to prove my masculinity, and while the whole time just hiding who I truly am and who I truly feel I should be.
When I first come out and told people, they were unable to believe it because some of my friends described me as the manliest man they ever knew, or the baddest dude they ever knew. I rose to the rank of Master Sergeant in Army Special Forces and active in National Guard. I've climbed the highest mountain in North America, South America. Got to between 24 and 25,000 feet on the north face of Mount Everest. I was on a combat dive team.
I do love my country, and I was in the gay parade, and I carried the flag representing the veterans. And I encourage everyone to fulfill their dreams in the service. This is a great country, and I believe in fighting for it, definitely.
When I got out of the service, then I did what I called the dog and pony show. And that way what I did was I pretended to be what everyone expected me to be, and on the inside I was just the real me. And that took an emotional toll as well.
How many veterans that are transgender are standing there with the Congressional Medal of Honor, and yet we still can't serve openly? Kind of hurts. And so I think the more people know, the less it'll hurt.
Speaking of colors, pink is for male and blue is for female. Sounds wrong, doesn't it? Around the beginning of the 19th century, that was considered the norm. It is interesting to note that before the emergence of pink and blue in the 19th century, both males and females were dressed in all white. It wasn't until recently in the scheme of things that gender stereotyping through color took a turn, and now the opposite is perceived to be the norm.
My maniversary is what I call it, is November 21st. So this November coming up will be my 2-year anniversary, or maniversary. When I started transitioning a couple years ago, I think it was the first time I was able to actually live my life without feeling suffocated.
Realize that I need to be true to myself, because the only person I'm honestly lying to is me.
When I am misgendered by somebody that's known me for years, and they've known that I've been transitioning over the last 2 years, and they've had 2 years, if they continue to misgender me, it makes me feel really small. If you do know a transgender, please try not to misgender them. And if you do, it's better to say, oh, I'm sorry, I meant, and change your gender, rather than just keep skipping over it. They would rather hear you say, oh, I'm sorry, I misgendered you. It kind of takes the blow away a little bit, the sting of the blow.
You need to be who you are. And if you are going to get where you need to be, you just have to be prepared that you will lose some things and you'll gain a lot of things. If you persevere and don't give up on your goal and you be true to yourself, you'll be happy.
I was married and I had 2 girls and a son. And I raised them, and I have a few grandchildren. And I saw those raised up. I was married almost 20 years. And after everyone was all raised and grown up, and I saw my responsibilities gone through, I thought it was my turn to be who I was supposed to be.
And making that transition from wanting shock value instead of the fear, I was able, through time, to understand that really all I wanted was to be satisfied in my own skin. So I had my sex reassignment surgery done in 2009.
Because of being part of the LGBT community, I have experienced homelessness. I've experienced being fired from jobs. And there's a lot of hardship that comes with that. There's a lot of prejudice out there, unfortunately.
I was brutally attacked while I was in the service and was about raped. I had to jump off my ship, my dive boat, to avoid being raped. And so that was why I was forced out of service.
Somewhere I'd found a reference to a psychologist that was specialized in trans issues, and so I went to see him, and I found out how difficult it was going to be to get where I wanted to be. I had to realize that I had to be prepared to give up everything. I have 2 kids. My daughter has nothing to do with me. I haven't heard or seen from her in 25 years. My son, on the other hand, he's very supportive, and we continue to talk and stuff like this.
And I want to tell all my trans brothers and sisters that I understand your hurt, and I feel your pain, and I want you to know, even if I've never met you, you could be around the world, you're my trans sister, my trans brother, and I love you. And don't let your despondency win. Don't let them win. You can overcome this. It does hurt. It's going to take time, but don't feel like you have to end your life because of somebody else's prejudice or hurtful words, because that's their issues, not yours. You're beautiful the way you are.
So with time, everything can change.
I went to school with a guy in 4th grade. Me and him and another friend of ours would go back and go to skinny dipping. So after 33 years of not being connected with family or anybody, I thought I'd break it to him gently, you know, let him know who I was. And so I told him that me and him and John used to go skinny dipping in Cow Creek. And he goes, I never went skinny dipping with no girls, you know, and I remember every naked girl I ever saw, you know, and I don't remember ever seeing you. So I thought that was pretty humorous too.
You know, I'm almost 60 years old, and I transitioned when I was 35. So that's 42 years of being an adult from age 18. And I've lived 60% of that as a female. And to me, that's a real accomplishment, and that makes a success. And even though I've had the entire surgery, I've gone through everything I needed to go, it really wasn't the surgery that was, you know, the icing on the cake. It was actually living the life of being a female, being treated as such, working as, going through the ups and downs of that. That was the real icing on the cake.
We're just human beings like everybody else. We just happen to have been born into the wrong body. And it is a very difficult journey for us.
Through time, I have come to a point of great satisfaction with the life I live. Again, my story was a story of trials and tribulations, and at the end, you know, being able to look everybody in the eye and say, yeah, I'm transgender. I love it.
In the end, everyone is the norm as they are.